Yeah.
And this week on the Weekly Check-In.
Okay, I know how much time you guys have. Y'all rolling with me?
Yeah, I got like another 30 minutes, 45 minutes, so we got time.
Damn.
I got another 30 minutes. We good.
Okay, all right. So talking about land, we're moving to another topic that I think is under the radar. But it's about environmental racism, and particularly environmental racism that are hitting two Black communities. One in Memphis, Tennessee, and the other one in Tampa Bay, Florida, which I think are really important. So I'm just going to kind of set it up, and I want to know, how you see these issues, right? And how do we need to address them? The first one is that in Memphis, Tennessee, two Texas oil companies are attempting to build a pipeline underneath the aqueduct of a community in Memphis, Tennessee that is largely African American. The residents have been fighting it, and what the oil companies are saying, well, this is the solution: eminent domain. Move your so we can build the pipeline, right? So that is actually right now up for vote by the council and what they're going to do. The second issue is an excellent a series of investigative journalism that came out actually, and is still rolling out in Tampa, Florida, which is about a company called Gopher Resource, which is a lead smeltering plant, which extracts lead out of, oh my goodness, out of batteries. And what this investigative journalism team, led by a Black man named Corey Johnson, all right? What this investigative journalism team discovered is that Gopher Resource, I think they bought it in 2004 or something like that. But since it took over the company, it has been overexposing workers to extreme toxic chemicals, which has resulted to the workers having heart attacks, massive heart attacks, strokes in their 20s, them passing on lead poisoning or high levels of lead in their blood to their children, and also reported deaths. This is so much so that the EPA, right? The people in the EPA are looking at this issue in Tampa and like, WTF, like this is an issue. Please tell me when y'all saw this, let me see what y'all saying about it.
So the first thing is that I thought to myself, man, this is why Donald Trump was gutting the EPA. Ooh. This is why he was making, because we have to remember the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, is an agency. It's not inside of a department. So it doesn't have a secretary, it has a director. And I'm pointing out the structure because it makes a difference. Because it's then difficult because they don't have adjudication power, right? When you're a secretary, then you have the ability to then sue the state for what they have or have not done. Underneath the EPA, you would then need to go to the Justice Department, or you would have to go to another agency to then be able to sue the state for what they've done. So I want to make that very, very clear as the structure. So if I gut the EPA, then I make it so that they can't even highlight or have a report. So yes, the EPA can adjudicate this or sue, right? They can't use the structure to sue, but they can end up having a whole bunch of documents that they can then be subpoenaed about if they're able to collect this information and this data. So what do? I want to strip them. So when I saw these two stories, I said, aha, now I see why he was so hell-bent on stripping them, especially in the Texas case, because eminent domain is going to rule out. So without the evidence of what it can do then to the land. So I was like, okay, now I understand what his play was there. And my thought is it goes back to this idea of value and what's worthy, right? You're not worthy of being told that, aren't you making money, right? Like Donald Trump said, I pay them well, right? I have African Americans working for me, but I pay them well, right? Yes, I have Hispanics working for me, but I pay them well. Yeah, you may work at this lead plant, but I pay you well. And since I pay you well, who cares about your health consequences? Who cares about the legacy it's going to pass down to your family? It doesn't matter. And so for me, I was like, this is the play. And now I understand why the play and where it's coming from.
Dang.
Yeah, so I want us to be very clear and look at this first one, look at the Memphis case, because I think that's setting up something bigger. And I say that because we've seen this there, like Texas, was it the Dakota pipeline, and also down in Colorado. So I think we
And
need
also
to
there was
keep
like a Wyoming, was that
a
was that
Wyoming. Yeah, it was a Wyoming one. And so I think we need to keep an eye on this, because what's happening is they're setting this up in a bunch of different states to be able to use eminent domain for whatever they want, right? Now it's changing from specific governmental things, because I know they were trying to do that here, even in Los Angeles, when it comes to the lots around the football stadium that's being built in Inglewood. They were trying to utilize eminent domain for that as well. So I want you to keep an eye on that, because of course the rich lobbyists are going to start to utilize that for these huge real estate groundbreakings that they're trying to do, that they're getting stuck in these Black neighborhoods. Because what's the next step after gentrification? Taking over the land, where taking over the land for building stores and shopping centers and all of that. That's the next step. So just pay attention to what's going on with these cases. Pay attention. And it's so crazy, because how Sharice was talking about, said, I pay you well. If you look at the figures they trying to pay these people, like $3,000 for their land, $8,000 for their land. I'm talking about like, get up out of here for $8,000. Are you crazy? And because people are bucking and saying, no, we don't. Big oil, of course, is going to put all the money they can behind this, because if big oil can do this, because they're losing so much ground in Saudi Arabia, they're losing so much ground in all the other places, that they're going to really need to get to fracking out here in the United States to try to pull these resources. Where the first place they're going to go to try to pull these resources? They're not going to go up on the Beverly Hills doing that. Right. So you have to pay attention, because that's going to be the next thing they do to try to pull these resources, is use eminent domain to get in these Black neighborhoods and do anything they can to get a hold to those resources in Black neighborhoods. Now, as to Tampa, and I have a lot of family in Tampa, so this was like jarring for me.
You need to pay. This is, I don't know if you read it all, but I just had to I had to sit it down, because I couldn't even, I was so disgusted.
I read it. I read it all, and I was like, yo, this is so ridiculous. Where when they read and they said they could see the lead shavings in the air when you walk into the place. My God, I said, this is ridiculous. And like you said, they had like a 24-year-old who had lead poisoning. They had 44-year-old with all these health problems, and to try to attribute it to just regular bad health, when you have that many people, I mean, it's beyond sinister. It's evil, but we know that you can get away with doing this in places where there are disenfranchised people who just need a job, who need to work. Because what's going to happen where we grow up in those neighborhoods, those dangerous jobs, what we say, well, they pay good money down there. Like when we was losing all them Black folks at the docks in Long Beach back in the day, and they were like, yeah, we know the dock, but once you get in that dock union, you're going to work for the rest of your life. We will be prepared to put our life in danger to make sure our families are okay, if that's the one of the limited ways we can make a really good living. And this is what you're seeing, them taking advantage of people in Tampa the same way. Like in Tampa, it's really it's a really distressed place, a really distressed town in a lot of places. So if you say this is one of the few places where you can go, you can get good work, you can hire your family members under you, you can pull your families in, so you're gonna have 2 and 3 generations of people with these lead issues and lead poisoning, passing it on to their kids with lead issues and lead poisoning. There's only certain places that you're going to be able to get away with that. So both of these things, when it comes to Memphis and Tampa, we need to keep a close eye on them, because these are the things that will affect us down the road.
You have me thinking about eminent domain and the highways that were built across America, and how they ran through all of these communities, and a lot of these communities, Black communities, right? Yeah. Let's start with, they ran through Black communities, and I can cite 4 communities off the top of my head. East Orange, Watts. There's this one in North Carolina. I forgot the name, but all of these were
in New Orleans. And in New Orleans.
Run through these established communities that had some level of wealth or well-to-do Black folk, and these were like the core of the centers of the Black community, and how they just ran those highways straight through and did eminent domain. And how eminent domain, you are right, it only happens, or it happens a lot in communities that are underrepresented, in Black communities, brown communities. In Newark, New Jersey, when I moved there in 2007, and I'm no lie, I would say maybe about 60%, maybe even more of the commercial property in downtown Newark had been abandoned since the late 60s, early 70s, because after the riots, the Jewish and Italian owned property owners refused to sell to Black people. They said, we will let these buildings rot before we sell them. Nobody didn't even touch them. Cory Booker, who becomes the mayor, could have enacted eminent domain after 50 years of these places being rotted out. But what did he do? He allowed the families that own them to rebroker and then sell them to their business partners. And now what's going on today in Newark? Massive gentrification, right? So it only is it is this club, right? This investment club that feeds in the politics, the political structure, as well as the real estate structure. There were a couple.
We had the same thing going on. We had the same thing going on here in Compton as well. There's a bunch of properties on off Wilmington and off of Long Beach Boulevard that a few of partners of mine were trying to rent or buy, and the guys they talked to who own these places to rent or buy, they said we make more money letting this sit here depleted as a tax break for us than we would if we actually rent it out or sell it to somebody. So they're letting it stay terrible, trashed, and ran down in these neighborhoods on purpose. So this is even more to your point about environmental racism. There are people who want to buy and rent these places from the community, who want to put things in our community to make our community better. And the guys who own it are saying, yeah, I get it that you want to rent on it, but we make more money really just letting it sit here being a tax shelter. And they're not even hiding it. They are saying that they're saying it out loud.
So a couple of things. So first, about this eminent domain piece about New Orleans. This is why the American, I think it's called the American Home Plan, or what the massive legislation that Biden presented at the State of the Union address is so crucially important, because what he is saying in the bill, if you go back and peel at some of the layers, which is why they're so upset about it, is that we need to relook at our highway system. Our highway system was built during Eisenhower, and it now needs an update. It's time for the update, but we need to systematically look at the Black communities in which we've torn down and tore up because of it. And New Orleans was hit the spotlight because of it, because a Black woman for the last 20 years has been hollering about the Highway 10, the bypass off 10 that was manufactured right through this prominent Black neighborhood, Kaya. He specifically mentioned, or that highway in particular was explicitly listed in the bill, and it was explicitly listed in the bill about we want to tear it down and rerun it, and it was other reasons why they want to rerun it, also because of soil content and other things, deterioration of the land in that area. But it highlighted for me the fact that, to Dave's point about setting precedent, that if we start talking about changing highways and we start talking about changing the entire infrastructure of America, then it's going to call into question all these other areas where we have allowed corporations, we have, in concert with the federal government or in concert with local government, take advantage of Black people because of the necessity to work, right? Because we need people to build highways, because we need people to be working in plants, because we need these things for the modern ways in which we live our lives. And what I mean by that is lead and batteries doesn't become an issue until everybody has a cell phone that needs a battery that has lead in it, right? That our technology and that the advances that we are making are creating a permanent underclass. And if we're going to have this underclass and create the permanent underclass, then it has to be amongst Black folks. And we have to be vigilant about how to push back against that in our democratic system, because we have the power to say, no, hell no, it will not be done to us.
But you know what happens, like when we talk about lead, there has been technology that has been created decades back that doesn't even need lead. But because the powers that be in these corporations and how they play this, political economics that goes on, these companies or corporations either can't get their product properly patented, or if they get it patented, they don't. They're not getting the money in order to mass produce, right? So these are
not even the money. So to your point, because lead is cheaper, right? What they'll do is then they'll artificially raise the other resources so that then it's not advantageous for a business owner then to go because it's so expensive then to make the product.
Good point. I just want to say this, like people might ask, like, what do these two incidents, what does this have to do with me? And I forgot, it was the Bronx. I want to talk the Bronx, which had the highways devastated the Bronx, right? If you ever do like a study on, urban decay, like the Bronx is like one of those central places. The Bronx, I want to say Chicago, and Wilmington, which is also on the other side of Watts, and Linwood. So these are all places that had Black communities that had, you had a professional class. I also, in the article about Tampa Bay and the poisoning, what some of the workers were doing, because you had to have a certain amount, or there was a threshold in terms of the lead in your blood. And if you went over that threshold, you were fined or you were suspended. But if you remained under the threshold, then you were given bonuses. This is what some of the workers were doing. Some of them were getting chelation therapy in order to remove the metals from their bodies. And one thing about chelation is it's something that you can't do all the time, but some of the people were doing it like every week. It's kind of like you trying to like remove all the toxins and you get like a colonic every day, right? Yeah. Which totally strips your digestive system of all of the,
enzymes, the enzymes.
And it's another word, right? But the other thing that people were doing, they were donating blood. And in the article, it says that when you donate blood, these blood processing centers do not test for lead.
Yeah.
So there were people who were getting transfusions with this high lead leveled blood. So this is a problem. I mean, amongst all the other things that are going on, because they haven't even, I'm waiting for more of the articles, the series to run out. They haven't talked about the wives and the girlfriends. They started talking about the children who have these developmental disorders, but what about all these wives? And it's interesting, Aaron Brockovich or Vic.
It's Brockovich from California, from Hinckley, California.
Okay, yeah, so she is the, renowned environmental activist that got like this really large suit back in the 80s or 90s.
Early 90s, fighting PG&E.
So she was on, and she was talking about military bases and how a lot of families have been reporting to her for decades of how the pollution from the military bases are causing infertility in the men. She wrote an op-ed and said that not only is it causing infertility for men, but the studies on the people who are living around these bases, the men's penises are shrinking. She was like, I bet you that got your attention now, that dick getting small. But so it's like, if this is happening on a military base, I know I stopped, was like, what? So if this is happening on a military base, right, which is supposed to be, where they're protecting our country and we're so much, veterans and we're proud. What do you think they're doing to us average folk that are not on the basis? I'm very concerned, but that's something that I think we need to keep on our rotation in terms of looking at things.
If you want to see good news, you don't see on regular TV from another perspective, something relative to your